Today, I want to speak to the warrior in you. Not the loud warrior, but the silent one. The one who carries burdens without complaint, who gives without hesitation, who tries again and again, even when the world does not applaud. This warrior deserves something you may have forgotten to give. Love. Your own love. For too long, many of us have placed our value in the hands of others, seeking approval, validation, permission to feel worthy. But understand this, when your worth depends
on someone else, you hand over the key to your peace. And peace is not something we can afford to outsource. When you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you stop negotiating your value. You no longer chase acceptance. You stand in it. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself. Self-love is not arrogance. It is alignment, an inner knowing that you are enough, even as you grow. It is discipline, boundaries, and compassion woven together. It is waking up every day and saying,
I deserve my own respect before I seek it from the world. Look within for a moment. Ask yourself, when was the last time you forgave yourself? When was the last time you rested without guilt? When was the last time you encouraged yourself the way you encourage others? If your answer is too long, then today becomes your turning point. Love yourself enough to walk away from what drains you. Love yourself enough to rise again after falling. Love yourself enough to invest in your
truth. And let the world witness what happens when a human being finally decides to love themselves fully, fiercely, unapologetically. Because the moment you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you become unstoppable.
Your growth, your health, your peace. Love yourself not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Remember this, the relationship you build with yourself sets the tone for every relationship in your life. When you strengthen it, everything else strengthens with it. So I leave you with this call to action. Start today, not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Choose one action, small or great, that honors you. Speak kindly to yourself. Protect your boundaries. Stand tall in your...
The first key idea is the recognition that many people unknowingly place their value in external hands, constantly looking for approval, recognition, or permission to feel worthy. Expanding this idea means understanding how deeply ingrained this habit is and how subtly it shapes decisions, emotions, and identity. From early childhood, people learn to associate praise with goodness and disapproval with inadequacy. This conditioning follows them into adulthood, where they continue to measure their self-worth by someone else's reaction. They wait for a compliment to feel attractive, for a nod of agreement to feel capable, for someone's affection to feel deserving of love. Yet this dependence becomes a silent prison. As long as validation is sourced externally, peace becomes fragile and unpredictable. Breaking this habit begins with awareness. You may not even realize how often you apologize unnecessarily, how often you change your behavior to avoid disappointing others, or how you give more than you have because you fear being rejected, or how frequently you judge yourself through someone else's imagined expectations. This pattern slowly erodes your sense of identity, leaving you uncertain about who you are without external approval. The truth is that you cannot build a stable sense of self on the shifting opinions of others. You must return to your own inner foundation. To love yourself more than anyone else in this context means learning to value your own voice above the noise around you. It means acknowledging that your worth is intrinsic, not given to you by another person, not validated by applause, not measured by accomplishments. Loving yourself at this depth requires courage, because it forces you to look inward, to confront the areas where you have abandoned yourself just to belong somewhere else. It requires honesty about the ways you have betrayed your own needs, dismissed your own dreams, or silenced your own emotions for the sake of pleasing others. This honesty is not always comfortable, but it is necessary for rebuilding. As you practice listening to your inner voice, you begin to realize that self-love is not a feeling that appears overnight. It is a practice of daily choices. Some days it looks like saying no to obligations that drain you. Other days it looks like speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it means choosing rest over productivity, or walking away from people who make you question your value. And sometimes it simply means acknowledging your emotions without judging yourself for having them. Each of these choices helps you reclaim pieces of yourself that were lost through years of external seeking. Over time, you will notice a shift. You stop craving validation because you have learned to validate your own experience. You stop chasing approval because you have learned to approve of yourself. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that do not honor you because you have learned to approve of yourself. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that do not honor you because you have learned to create space within yourself where you truly belong. The second key idea centers on the understanding that self-love is not arrogance but alignment, an inner recalibration that returns you to your true center. Many people hesitate to love themselves deeply because they have been taught that prioritizing their own well-being makes them selfish or self-centered. This misunderstanding leads them to downplay their strengths, silence their needs, and accept less than they deserve. But genuine self-love has nothing to do with superiority. It is about harmony. It is the recognition that you are a whole human being with emotions, boundaries, and dreams that matter as much as anyone else's. When you operate from this place of inner alignment, you no longer bend yourself into shapes that disconnect you from your truth. To expand this idea further, imagine how often people compromise their internal equilibrium just to stay connected to others. They remain in conversations that drain them, environments that diminish them, or relationships that weaken their spirit, not because they want to, but because they fear appearing difficult or ungrateful. They carry emotional burdens that are not theirs to hold, absorb criticism that was never meant for them, and tolerate disrespect simply to avoid conflict. Without alignment, life becomes a series of reactions rather than deliberate choices. The self becomes scattered, fragmented across countless expectations and roles. This fragmentation leaves people feeling exhausted, disconnected, and unsure of who they truly are. Alignment begins with the willingness to pause and turn inward. It requires the ability to examine your own patterns and ask yourself whether the life you are living reflects the person you truly want to be. It requires noticing the moments when you shrink, the times when you ignore inner discomfort, and the instances when you say yes while your entire being wants to say no. These moments reveal the silent agreements you have made with yourself to prioritize others at your own expense. Loving yourself means breaking those agreements and forming new ones that honor your inner truth. It means giving yourself permission to take up space emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. As alignment grows, so does clarity. You begin to see more clearly what resonates with your spirit and what disrupts your peace. You become more aware of the difference between obligations that reflect your values and obligations that pull you away from them. You identify relationships that nurture your growth as well as those that benefit from your presence while offering nothing in return. Alignment is not about isolating yourself from others. It is about choosing connections that flow naturally without self-betrayal. It is about recognizing that you do not need to diminish your light to make others feel comfortable. When you stand in alignment, you also stop negotiating your value. You no longer adjust your standards to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You no longer tolerate treatment that contradicts the respect you know you deserve. Instead, you make decisions that reflect your inner worth, not your fears. This shift is subtle at first, but over time it becomes powerful. You walk differently, speak differently, and think differently because your actions come from a place of self-respect rather than self-doubt. The third key idea focuses on understanding that self-love is expressed through discipline, boundaries, and compassion woven into the fabric of your everyday life. Many people imagine self-love as merely a feeling, something warm, gentle, and comforting. But true self-love is also the willingness to make difficult choices that protect your well-being, even when it feels uncomfortable. It is the discipline to follow through on what is good for you, the boundaries that shield your energy from harm, and the compassion that softens your inner landscape when you make mistakes. Together, these elements create a foundation strong enough to support your growth, your peace, and your sense of identity. Discipline is often misunderstood as harsh or rigid, but in the context of self-love, discipline is a profound act of self-respect. It is the choice to show up for yourself even when motivation is low or when excuses present themselves as reasonable alternatives. Discipline is waking up earlier to nurture your mind, stepping away from unhealthy habits, and committing to practices that elevate your life. It is recognizing that the version of you aspire to become requires consistency, not perfection. When you cultivate discipline out of self-love, it becomes less about pushing yourself and more about caring for your future self, making choices today that the person you become tomorrow will be grateful for. Boundaries are another essential expression of self-love, and they are often the hardest for people to uphold. Many individuals feel guilty for setting limits or fear that doing so will push others away. Yet without boundaries, life becomes filled with noise, other people's expectations, demands, and emotional weight flooding your inner world. Boundaries protect your energy, your peace, and your emotional clarity. They allow you to engage with others from a place of strength rather than resentment or exhaustion. A boundary is not a wall, it is a clear line that says, "This is where I honor myself." It might be the decision to spend less time with those who drain your spirit, to say no without needing to justify yourself, or to prioritize rest when your body asks for it. Boundaries teach others how to treat you, but more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. Compassion completes this triad by giving you permission to be human. Many people treat themselves with an inner harshness they would never apply to someone they care about. They criticize themselves relentlessly for mistakes, compare themselves to others, and hold themselves to impossible standards. True self-love requires a gentler approach. Compassion allows you to acknowledge your flaws without letting them define you. It allows you to accept that growth is non-linear, that healing takes time, and that missteps are part of your evolution. Compassion keeps you grounded when the world feels heavy and reminds you that you are worthy even in your imperfect moments. When discipline, boundaries, and compassion work together, they create a powerful internal structure. Discipline moves you forward, boundaries protect your direction, and compassion keeps your heart open along the journey. The fourth key idea revolves around the understanding that loving yourself means consistently choosing actions that honor your inner truth, your emotional well-being, and your long-term growth. This is not a one-time declaration but an ongoing practice of showing up for yourself in ways that reinforce your worth. Many people say they want to love themselves, but their daily actions tell a different story. They overextend themselves to prove their value, tolerate disrespect because they fear loss, and remain in situations that drain them simply because change feels uncomfortable. Learning to act in alignment with self-love requires recognizing these patterns and consciously choosing differently, even when the familiar path feels easier. To expand this idea, consider how often people settle for what is convenient rather than what is healthy. They stay in conversations that undermine them, justify behavior that hurts them, and internalize negativity as if it were truth. They swallow their emotions in order to keep the peace and compromise their needs to avoid disappointing others. Over time, this pattern becomes habitual. The self grows quieter, dimmer, and less visible. Loving yourself means refusing to keep shrinking to fit into spaces that no longer honor you. It means noticing when something feels wrong and trusting your own discomfort as a signal rather than a weakness. Your intuition becomes a compass, pointing you toward what aligns and away from what drains. Choosing actions that honor you also means reclaiming responsibility for your own emotional health. It is easy to blame circumstances or people for how you feel, but empowerment begins with recognizing your ability to choose how you respond. Each choice either strengthens or weakens your relationship with yourself. When you choose to communicate honestly instead of suppressing your feelings, you reinforce your voice. When you choose rest over burnout, you reinforce your worth. When you choose to walk away from environments that suffocate your growth, you reinforce your boundaries. These choices do not always feel heroic in the moment, but they accumulate. They form the architecture of a life built on self-respect. This key idea also emphasizes the need to break cycles of self-abandonment. Many individuals repeatedly prioritize others to the point where their own needs become invisible. They trade authenticity for acceptance and silence their desires because they fear being rejected. Yet every time you abandon yourself for someone else's comfort, you teach your mind that your needs are secondary. Loving yourself means reversing this pattern. It means choosing honesty over appeasement, clarity over confusion, and inner peace over external approval. Means acknowledging when you are giving too much and recognizing when you must step back to protect your emotional space. In practicing these actions, you begin to understand that self-love is not passive, it is deliberate. It demands a willingness to face discomfort, make difficult decisions, and stand firm in your truth. Sometimes it requires saying no to people you care about. Sometimes it requires letting go of roles that no longer fit you. Sometimes it requires redefining what you believe you deserve. With each aligned action, you reinforce the message that your life, your energy, and your well-being matter deeply. The fifth key idea is grounded in the realization that the relationship you build with yourself becomes the foundation for every other relationship in your life. Many people underestimate the power of this internal relationship. They invest time, energy, and emotion into others while neglecting the one connection that influences all the rest, their connection with themselves. When you do not nurture this inner relationship, you move through the world seeking completion or validation from others. You rely on external reassurance to feel secure, cling to relationships that repeat old wounds, or accept treatment that reflects your lack of self-belief. But when your relationship with yourself becomes strong, centered, and compassionate, the way you show up in every other connection naturally evolves. To expand this idea, imagine two people, one who avoid authenticity because they have not yet accepted their own truth. The difference between these two individuals has nothing to do with their environment and everything to do with their inner relationship. When you cultivate a strong inner relationship, you develop emotional independence, not in the sense of shutting people out, but in the sense of not needing others to fill the spaces within you. You can appreciate love without depending on it for identity. You can handle disagreement without feeling personally diminished. You can let people go without collapsing. This inner strength transforms how you interact with the world. You begin to choose relationships that resonate with your values instead of relationships that temporarily soothe your insecurities. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy and start recognizing genuine connection built on respect, communication, and alignment. A strong relationship with yourself also enhances your ability to love others without feeling personally diminished. You can let people go without collapsing. This inner strength transforms how you interact with the world. You begin to choose relationships that resonate with your values instead of relationships that temporarily soothe your insecurities. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy and start recognizing genuine connection built on respect, communication, and alignment. A strong relationship with yourself also enhances your ability to love others. When your inner world is nourished, you give from a state of abundance rather than depletion. You listen more deeply, empathize more sincerely, and support more authentically. You are not giving to be needed, appreciated, or validated. You are giving because your heart has the space to do so. This transforms not only romantic relationships, but also friendships, family dynamics, and professional interactions. When your self-worth is intact, you no longer tolerate manipulation or disrespect, and you no longer participate in cycles of pleasing, avoiding, or proving. You choose healthier dynamics because you feel healthier within yourself. The relationship you have with yourself is also reflected in the standards you set. If you treat yourself with care, you naturally expect the same from others. If you speak to yourself kindly, you stop accepting criticism disguised as concern. If you honor your feelings, you stop letting others dismiss them. This internal shift quietly reshapes the world around you. People respond to the energy you embody. The more grounded you are within yourself, the more grounded your relationships become. Ultimately, strengthening the relationship you have with yourself means learning to trust your own voice, honor your emotions, and hold space for your growth without judgment. It means recognizing that every connection in your life mirrors the one you maintain with your inner self. The sixth key idea centers on the profound transformation that occurs when you finally internalize the truth of your own worth and begin living from a place of deep, unwavering self-love. This transformation is not loud or dramatic at first. It begins quietly, often in small shifts that accumulate over time. Yet these shifts alter the entire trajectory of your life. When you love yourself more than anyone else, you stop living reactively. Your decisions are no longer driven by fear, insecurity, or the desire to be accepted. Instead, they arise from clarity, inner strength, and a grounded sense of self. This internal shift creates an external ripple, changing how you move through the world, how you handle challenges, and how you respond to opportunities. To expand this idea, imagine what happens when you no longer doubt your worth. Suddenly, situations that once intimidated you begin to feel manageable. Conversations that you used to avoid because of fear now feel like opportunities to express your truth. Tasks you once postponed because you felt inadequate become steps you willingly take because you trust your own capability. Self-love becomes the quiet engine that fuels courage. It allows you to take risks that align with your purpose, to pursue goals that once felt impossible, and to release patterns that kept you small. This transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about uncovering the strength that was always there, buried beneath self-doubt and external.
As this transformation deepens, you begin to realize that obstacles no longer affect you in the same way. Challenges still arise. Life does not become easier simply because you love yourself, but your relationship to those challenges changes. Instead of crumbling under pressure, you become adaptable. Instead of questioning your value when something goes wrong, you assess the situation with composure and resilience. Self-love equips you with emotional stability, making it harder for
disappointments to define you or failures to break you. You develop a stronger inner anchor, so even when life pulls you in different directions, you can return to your center without losing yourself. This transformation also influences the quality of opportunities you attract. When you embody self-worth, you gravitate toward experiences that reflect that worth. People sense the difference in your presence not because you seek attention, but because you carry yourself with authenticity and confidence. You begin to attract relationships that match your growth, opportunities that align with your values, and environments that elevate rather than drain you. Self-love sharpens your ability to discern what is aligned with your path and what is merely a distraction. As you become more aligned internally, external alignment naturally follows. Another element of this transformation is the shift in how you treat your own potential. Many people hold themselves back out of fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But when you genuinely love yourself, you stop standing in your own way. You allow yourself to try, to explore, to create, and to evolve. You stop waiting for perfect conditions or external permission. You begin to act with intention and trust, knowing that even if the road is difficult, you are capable of walking it. You become more willing to invest time and effort into your dreams, not because you are guaranteed success, but because you understand that your growth is worth the effort. The transformation that emerges from deep self-love is not about dominance or superiority, it is about liberation. It frees you from the need to prove yourself, to shrink yourself, or to negotiate your own value. It frees you from internal battles that have drained your energy for years. It frees you from the patterns that kept you stuck in cycles of doubt, fear, or self-sabotage. This freedom creates momentum, an internal power that moves you. Understand that your growth is worth the effort. The transformation that emerges from deep self-love is not about dominance or superiority, it is about liberation. It frees you from the need to prove yourself, to shrink yourself, or to negotiate your own value. It frees you from internal battles that have drained your energy for years. It frees you from the patterns that kept you stuck in cycles of doubt, fear, or self-sabotage. This freedom creates momentum, an internal power that moves you forward with clarity and inner conviction.